Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 942. My opponent started off here with d4. I played knight f6. He went c4, and I went e6. So I'm setting up for a Nimzo-Indian, and he allows it with knight c3. You can avoid it with knight f3. But anyway, knight c3 is fine, allowing the Nimzo-Indian. And then he plays queen c2. I play the e3 move myself, the Rubinstein variation. But that's actually an older variation at this point. Let's see. Well, queen c2 is kind of the original reply that was popular in the 20s and 30s when Nimzovich was playing this opening. Then e3 came into fashion and was the most popular move for a long time. And now things have changed, and queen c2 seems to be the most popular move at the top level again. So queen c2, a very respectable move here. And I went with c5. And you'll notice I don't play castles, which is the top response. But there's a specific line here I wanted to show you that caused me some trouble, and I gave up on castling here. That's the way I used to play it. But if you castle here, white has this interesting move, e4. It's not the most popular move, but it maybe is the sharpest. He can just play that pawn up in one move, and why not? He's got that big pawn front there. In black, if he wants to try and get something, actually black is supposed to be equal here, but he has to work actively to undermine the center to gain that equality. And you get this very sharp position because after white pushes and kicks the knight, it doesn't really want to retreat and just be locked in behind the pawn chain, so it goes forward. And it makes sense in a way because it's ganging up on that knight there. But the knight here is potentially trapped. It has no other squares it can go to. All these squares are covered. The bishop is covering that square. So it has no retreat squares, and it can't go forward except to take the knight. So if this knight were to move away and pawn to f3 were to be played, that knight would be trapped there. So anyway, this is a very sharp position. Also, white continues with bishop d3. So if the knight does move, maybe white can grab there with check. So anyway, a very tricky position, and black continues here with c5 to undermine white's center. But a very sharp double-edged position, and one that I've had trouble with. So I kind of gave up playing this way. I couldn't remember the reams of theory needed to survive this. So I changed to playing c5 here, just trying to increase the pressure on the d-pawn in the center. And white normally takes here. This is the most common move. And then I've been taking back right away, although it turns out you can castle here and wait for your bishop to get kicked and then take. And this is a fine position, say, after knight f3. White is a little better here, typical kind of opening advantage, but certainly this is a playable position for black, maybe continuing with b6 and developing the bishop here. So seems like it's all okay. Anyway, that would be how the game might go if white had played the main line. But he played e3 here, so this is a rare move, and we're in a section of the database where there's only a few games. I continue with knight c6, just continuing to pile up pressure on the d-pawn. He defended with knight f3, and then I castled here. It's fine to castle now. That let's see, if e4 in this position, I can play d6 to give this knight a square on d7 to run to and to stop that pawn from coming forward. So yeah, I'm not so worried about e4 in these cases. Bishop d3 would be a pretty normal move right here, but he went bishop e2, and we're just out of the opening book at this point. Although you saw it was a section of the opening book with very few games in it, so it doesn't mean a whole lot. But bishop d3 is probably a little more accurate there. It's just a more active diagonal for the bishop to put it on this diagonal. So anyway, I continued with the exchange here. He never played a3. It seems like he's not going to, so I decided to settle things. I wanted to see how he's going to take back. If he takes back with the queen, then maybe I'll play my knight up here and follow with f5 to support it. But he took with the pawn, and I continue with d6. So I'm just playing the standard way that I normally play the Nimzo-Indian, which is to get the pawn on d6, push this one forward to e5 and open up this diagonal for the light squared bishop, and that usually leads to a pretty decent position for black. I've been happy with that, and I don't see any reason to change it. So he castled here. I went with e5. He pushed on with d5, that's the main move, and I played knight e7. I wanted to mention the main alternative here, which is slightly preferred by the chess engine actually, is knight a5. And you see this is a very common idea in the Nimzo. Black can continue with b6 and bishop to a6 and gang up on that pawn and really just win it. You can actually win that pawn, but then you have two pieces that are out of play on this side of the board, and I never like to play that way either. I would rather bring my pieces over to the king side where the action is and try and get something going that way. So I go knight e7 here. He goes e4, and both moves are okay. I think it's a matter of taste, although as I said, the chess engine slightly prefers knight a5 there. I continue with knight g6. He goes bishop g5, and I kick it with h6. Bishop g5, yeah, maybe it's a bit of a wasted tempo. He could retreat, but well, that would definitely be a waste of tempo. So he takes this opportunity to take off my knight. That was the better knight. So this knight the knight on g6. I still have to figure out how to get that into the game. Although it looks like maybe I'll get it to this f4 square. Well, he can stop that actually. So anyway, I just wanted to say that was not a bad exchange for white. White is still doing fine here. Rook fe1 is a slight mistake. So I would say so far white has only made two slight mistakes. This game is still very even. But this was the second one. The first one was that e3 move, which was a bit slow. And now this one, the chess engine is really recommending g3 right here. Take control of that f4 square and don't let the knight in there. And then, black may end up with some silly-looking pieces. I'll probably have to relocate the bishop and maybe push the f-pawn forward to try and get anything going here. So anyway, that would be fine. After rook fe1, maybe there's a slight edge to black in this position. I continued with knight f4. He dropped his bishop back. He wanted to keep his light squared bishop. And then I played knight h3 check. Yeah, it was an interesting idea. It works. There's nothing wrong with it, and it was one of the moves that the chess engine said was playable and still good for black. But it wasn't his favorite move. The chess engine would play something like rook b8 or maybe just b6. So, but these kind of moves, they don't really have a plan. The chess engine is just kind of shoring things up and eliminating weaknesses. So, at some point you've got to do something a little more active to try and break through. So there's nothing wrong with this knight h3 move. And let's see, he goes king h1. That's pretty much the only move. If he takes, I'll take his knight, and then he's got a wrecked king side and nothing to show for it. And then I develop my bishop finally, getting my last piece, a minor piece into the game. I still haven't got the rooks in the game. And he goes rook e3. And I drop my knight back to g5. Well, once again, the chess engine did not like this move so much. It would play like this: rook a to b8, a4, king to h7. Oops, sorry, let's go back. King to h7, and knight e1. Well, knight e1 is an idea because it means that I have to move my knight, so knight f4. But it's hard to say if I've really accomplished anything by this sequence of moves, and also white could have played differently. None of that was very forcing at all. But anyway, that's the way the chess engine would play it. I drop my knight back to g5, and I just wanted to get things going here on the king side. He has to respond to this threat to his knight. He decided to trade, which was good, and then play rook g3, pinning my bishop. So white is playing this part of the game well. I think he's played the whole game well. He's just had those two inaccuracies, and other than that, he's been keeping up with me. Let's see, I played queen h5. He went h3, kicking my bishop. I retreated. Let's see, he went bishop e2, kicking my queen, and I went to queen h4, keeping it on the king side here. I'm still waiting for that moment when I can get in the f5 move, but he's been keeping me busy with threats, and now he plays bishop g4, which kind of puts a stop to the plan. So good play by white once again. I take his bishop, he takes back, and I played queen h5, keeping my queen on the king side over here and still trying to get an f4. The chess engine at this point would just drop the queen back to e7. Well, once again, this is just kind of a shoring up move. It protects the pawn here, holds on to the center, but it doesn't have any active plan that I can see. So I think there's really nothing wrong with the way I played it, queen h5. Although it does allow maybe some ideas for white I have to be careful about. Let's see, he played rook f1 here. The chess engine would go queen to b1. Okay, looking at the pawn, I play b6, then queen to d1 with a threat. And the queen is lined up like this, then there's a threat of rook takes g7 check, winning my queen. So I have to move the king to the side, and then a4, maybe pushing that forward to undermine, and then I get in the f5 move. So that would be kind of a slower way to get to, but I still managed to get to f5, I guess. In the game, I got to f5 right away. And you know, one difference is this line here has left his, he's made some progress on the queen side and he's left his rook here. Whereas in the game, he brought his rook over to the king side. So maybe maybe it's a better strategy for white in this position to just kind of hold things on the king side and try to go for a queen side play and create a weakness over here. If he has enough force, you know, that he can hold on to everything, then that should be okay for white. Anyway, let's see. I went queen h5, he went rook f1, and I got my f5 break-in now. He takes, I took with the rook, and maybe I'm going to bring the other rook over to double. I played queen e2, once again setting up this idea of rook takes g7 check. So I moved my king to the side. He went queen e4. I went rook a to f8, and by this time he was actually starting to get slow on time. So the next few moves were mistakes that really give me a winning edge. I think up until this point the game is still in the balance. Maybe there's a slight advantage to black here, but not necessarily winning. So on both sides I think have played a pretty decent game so far. Rook h4, just a bit of a mistake. He should just directly go f3 and just try and hold on to things this way. But he wanted to chase my queen away. That's kind of understandable. But I can come back here and still have pressure on the f-pawn. And then once again, he should play f3 there. But instead he went f4, and that just loses a pawn. And so now I'm definitely winning. Let's see, he continued with rook g4. I went on with f3. Although f3 was not the best move here. Instead of f3, g5 is the engine's preference. Well, just holding on to things here. I guess maybe white is a little bit powerless. You could play h4 here to try and undermine the pawns. And then the chess engine has the idea of switching the rooks over to the e file like this. Rook e8 to chase the queen away. And then the queen maybe should go all the way back to b1. And then double the rooks here. Now the rooks can invade on the 7th rank. Or if this rook comes up, then they can go to the 8th rank, or 1st rank, I guess, 2nd and 1st rank. So anyway, looks like a pretty serious invasion there, and that's maybe the bigger, the quickest win. The way I played it, though, I think is fine. It just leads to a winning endgame. I can't really avoid dealing with this pawn in some way, and this is going to lead to more exchanges. Let's see, he took, I took, and then here he lost on time. But it's just an end game where I'm a pawn up, and his king is more exposed, and he also has weak pawns over on the queen side. So it's a pretty easily winning end game for black. So really, it wasn't until he got into time trouble and made a couple of inaccurate moves that happened. So anyway, a pretty nice game overall. I'm happy with it. I think when I looked at it with Lichess, it found one mistake and some inaccuracies, or one blunder and some mistakes, or something like that. But when I looked over it with the chess engine, I didn't see anything. I mean, of course, I can't always play the most accurate move, but I am not a chess engine. But in terms of the moves I did play, I would not count any of them as blunders. I think I played a pretty good game here. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.